Kia ora koutou. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and I don't know if this is me back on here or just trying a thing, but I something I've been doing a bit of in these years that I have not been posting YouTube videos is creative writing, and I just wanted to share some with you all on here. Uh, I'm going to read a short story that I wrote sometime last year. It's probably the first piece of proper fiction I ever wrote, and I really had a great time writing it. Um, yeah, just wanted to share it here. Uh, it's uh, it's called From the Rooftop to the River, and I have to credit Tui, my awesome child, for coming up with the sort of core idea behind the story. So, yeah, here we go. The air was sweet, all those rich scents of late spring, and the moonlight danced prettily on the river as Jax lay back in the soft grass and stretched her toes out long. No one was around, she was pretty sure. The others would all be hunting on the south side tonight. She had the night to herself and she was going to enjoy it. She patted the little bump in the pocket of her tattered jeans and smiled to herself. Not yet, but soon. First she would just savor the anticipation, feel the gentle breeze through her fur, soak up the aliveness of the moon, sink into the earth below her. Of course, if Nicky caught her, she'd never hear the end of it. Her shoulders hunched. Don't care, she told herself again, almost convincing. Jax defiantly crammed her fist into her pocket and pulled out her little treasure. It was just plastic, nothing really. Still, it was beautiful. Transparent caramel and blotches of coffee. The first comb she'd ever owned. She hadn't even known she'd wanted such a thing. But last week, when she saw it laying in the bushes of the playground, she snatched it up and shoved it in her pocket. It'd been all she can think of ever since. Now she was going to try it out. Tonight. Right now. Well, any minute. She threw a glance over her shoulder. No one is here, just me. She held the comb to her arm and slowly, shaking a little, how stupid, she drew it down over her fur from elbow to wrist. It was slightly scratchy, but in a good way, and as she fell into a rhythm, it was so relaxing, hypnotizing, watching the clumps of fur turn smooth and start to shine in the moonlight. Shine. There was a black fleck through her golden coat. She had never thought about it before. She got that from her dad. It looked beautiful now. Her arm looked beautiful. Of course, it couldn't stay like this. She'd have to roll in a puddle or something after her hunt so the others didn't notice. But for now at least, for the next couple of hours, no one was here and she could sit and comb and comb and comb. Madeline sat quietly on the rooftop watching the night. Up high was her favourite place to be. She liked to be able to watch without being seen. The cold reflected light of the moon shone on her face, full. There would be werewolves out tonight. Those mangy scum, as her mother called them. She didn't mind them though. Actually, she'd never really met any werewolves, so she didn't know what she thought about them. But she wasn't worried. She was up here. Nothing could bother her up here. Only the moon and the owls could see her here. She smoothed out her skirt, checked her cuffs, patted her hair, looking sharp, as Nana would say. Her smooth hair and crisp, beautiful clothes sat around her like a polished shell, a kind of armour that protected her from the world and stopped her being seen. What was inside? She didn't really know. She smoothed out her skirt again. She watched the still night around her. Down below, a young werewolf sauntered into view. She looked loose and smug, like she'd just completed a hunt, and as Madeline watched, she threw herself down onto the ground and rolled in the mud, her shoulder blades working to really grind her back into the dirt. Disgusting, Madeline said. But even as the word was leaving her lips, an electric prickle was shooting up her spine, flashing hot across her chest and cheeks, and the edges of her were bursting out in every direction. What was inside her was the sun. Her stomach clenched painfully and her mouth filled with saliva. She smoothed her skirt, spat, patted her hair. She had changed her mind. Madeline hated werewolves. Madeline sat again on her favourite rooftop. The moon was full. Would she see the wolf? It had been a few months since she first saw her, and she idly wondered, what had she been up to? Probably rummaging in rubbish bins, pissing up walls. What else do werewolves do for fun? Tear off their clothes and run naked through the streets? Reprobates. She smiled, smoothed her skirt, patted her hair. Nothing. Waiting, watching. Then the young werewolf stalked into view. She was tense and watchful, glancing around her as she dug among some bushes and pulled out a backpack. She hugged it possessively to her chest. Probably full of kittens she means to eat alive, Madeline thought. She smoothed her skirt. She was quite fond of cats. They're clean, proud animals, fast and sleek. Vampires have always had an affinity for cats. She'd better follow the wolf. Make sure nothing happened to those kittens. By the time Madeline caught up with the girl, she was crouching over something on the bank of the river, throwing the occasional furtive glance over her shoulder. What is this beast up to? Madeline approached silently until she was standing right over the wolf. She was shocked, far more disgusted than she expected to be, the disappointment worse than all the horror she had imagined. The wolf was looking into a small hand mirror, combing the fur on her face and fussing with a tiny clip on her head in the shape of a butterfly. A butterfly. Madeline's lip curled into a sneer and she burst out, "What are you doing?" Jax, who had been completely lost in her own sweet world, jumped and spun around to see a delicate young vampire glaring down at her with more contempt than she had ever seen. Her hackles came up and she let out a low growl. "What's it to you, bat?" "Have some self-respect," replied the girl. Jax felt a fire in her belly and she blushed hot across her cheeks. She leapt at the vampire, giving her a good hard warning swipe to the face. The girl touched her cheeks, eyes wide and wet. Then she threw off her coat and pounced on Jax like a cat, knocking her to the ground and sinking her sharp teeth into the side of Jax's neck. "Ah!" "Bleh!" the vampire exclaimed, sitting back and rubbing the fur from her tongue. Jax took the advantage, flipping her over and slamming her hard into the earth. She gave her best menacing growl right in the girl's face. But instead of cowering and submitting, the vampire simply smiled up at her. "That's creepy." Jax jumped back. "What?" Climbing to her feet, the vamp gave a little laugh. "Never been in a fight before. It was fun." Jax rocked back onto her hunches, her head cocked to one side. As someone who'd been roughhousing with her siblings and many cousins since before she could talk, this idea was a little hard to wrap her head around. "What, never?" The girl simply smiled and gave a slight shake of her head. "What kind of killer are you?" The vampire straightened her shoulders and smoothed her skirt. "An efficient one." Jax was incredulous. "Don't make a mess, that's the family motto. No need to act like animals. No offence." Still that contempt. "Don't want to muss your pretty clothes, huh?" Jax scoffed, her eyes falling to the coat hanging in the bushes. She snatched it up, thinking to taunt the vampire a little more, but as she held it in her hands, a kind of weakness came over her. She had never been so close to anything so beautiful. Even in the cold moonlight, it managed to glow a warm raspberry red, and it was so soft, a kind of very fine velvet, and there was an intricate pattern of vines and flowers and birds running all over it, in a smooth silk thread. Someone had worked for weeks, maybe months, on this piece of cloth. She felt a little dizzy at that idea. Madeline felt cold watching this wolf stare at her coat with such obvious longing when she cared nothing for it at all. Well, go on. Try it on then, she sneered. The girl looked up at her with gratitude and wonder. Madeline had to look away. Carefully, like it might fall apart in her hands, the young werewolf slipped her arms into the coat. Where it had swallowed Madeline, the coat fit firm against the girl's strong body, like a second skin. The tight shoulders forced her to stand up straighter. She looked very powerful, very beautiful, like she was born to wear that coat. Keep it, Madeline muttered. What? The girl stared. Won't your people be angry if you come back without it? Say I lost it in a fight to a werewolf. Madeline slammed the door when she arrived home and furiously stripped off her muddy boots and clothes, leaving them in a pile on the floor. The staff would deal with them tomorrow while she slept. She stomped up the stairs in her camisole and stockings, hating werewolves with every footfall. How dare that vermin look better in her coat than her? What was she doing anyway, down by the river playing dress-up, when she could be tearing off her clothes and running naked through the streets, clad only in her glossy hide? Perhaps Madeline should get her skinned and turned into a glorious fur coat. That thought brought a wicked smile to her lips and pleased her immensely, until she remembered that she looked just as forgettable in furs as she did in that red brocade she'd just given away. She simply glowered for a few steps. What is the wolf thinking? Is she trying to pass herself off as a vampire? Ridiculous. She imagined the wolf dashing in her red coat, sauntering boldly into the ballroom during one of Mother's little gatherings. A prickle of excitement ran up her spine at the thought of it. What would she do? Would she try a turn of the dance floor, clumsily imitating a waltz, her tail swishing against Mother's elegant guests? Would she simply smash the place up before tearing off her clothes and, of course, running off into the night? Both versions made Madeline smile as she crossed her bedroom floor. Then the sight of herself in the mirror caught her. Her hair was sweated out and wild, a curly, tangled mass around her head, instead of its usual polished drape down her back. She reached up to try to smooth it and noticed her bare arm. It glowed blue in the moonlight. She looked at the mirror again. She was muddy, dishevelled, and half naked. She'd never looked better. Her eyes glowed wild. She didn't need a wolfskin coat. She was the wolf. The breath caught in her throat. Madeline held her hand up in front of her face so she couldn't see her reflection, and she stalked to the shower, smoothing her unruly hair as she went. Quiet midnight streets. Jax's warm nose pressed against the cold glass of a woman's clothing boutique. She held her breath to stop the window from fogging as her sharp eyes strained to make out what was inside. She was curious now. She wanted to know what people wore and how they wore it. She felt warm knowing that the red coat was close to her, carefully rolled up in her backpack. But when she put it on, it somehow didn't seem right on its own. It needed other things. But what other things? Of course, she had no idea where she'd wear it. Working the gardens, caring for the young cubs, building repairs around the homestead. And the pack. Her stomach clenched tight. Weak, silly, soft. Granddad might just smile and say, "You do you, darling." But she could imagine the aunties treating her like she was a pup who wasn't done playing with dolls. Her beautiful new coat was not enough and too much at the same time. Jax let out a long sigh, fogging the glass. Or maybe she wasn't done playing with dolls. Damn the aunties and damn Nikki. She was enjoying this pretty stuff, and why shouldn't she play? She turned away from the shop window. It had just left her cold anyway, and headed back to the river to enjoy her treasures before morning broke. Another full moon. Madeline was waiting for the wolf. She'd been leaving her hunting until later and later each full moon, in case she saw her. It's pretty much impossible to blush without some fresh blood in your veins. Or to feel any strong feelings, for that matter, other than that nagging hunger. She wanted to be cool next time she saw the wolf. She patted her hair, smoothed her skirt, armour in place. She sat on her rooftop, watching the night, sitting with the hunger, holding her breath. Sorry. The agitation built as the night stretched long, and still no wolf. Ugh. Finally she gave up waiting and headed down to the river. Sure enough, there was the wolf, in her splendid red coat, combing her powerful leg from knee to toes. "There you are," Madeline said, exasperated. Yeah," the werewolf replied, her eyes wandering slowly over Madeline's body. Madeline's breath caught in her throat, and she was deeply grateful she couldn't blush, as the memory of the wolf slamming her into the ground suddenly came very fresh into her mind. When she met the wolf's gaze, the girl's eyes sparkled back at her, as though she'd read her mind. Werewolves can't do that, can they? Some vampires can, but Madeline was pretty sure werewolves can't. "You come for another fight, huh? Maybe win back your coat?" Huh. Maybe. Jax could see the young vamp didn't know what to do with herself, so she lumbered to her feet and extended a paw. "I'm Jax," she smiled. "You live around here, or do you just come this way to hunt?" "Oh, yes, Madeline," the girl replied, stiffly offering her hand. "No, we live up on the hill. I just like the view from the rooftops around here." "Why do you come here?" Jax looked down at her feet and spread her arms wide. "I don't know. A little alone time? I like the quiet of the river. Pack life is pretty noisy. It's nice to hear myself think." "Huh, and all this?" Jax rubbed the back of her head. "Playing dress-ups, I guess." "But why?" Madeline exclaimed. "Why do you want to? Wouldn't you rather be running naked through the streets?" She ended in a mumble. Jax threw her head back and laughed a long, throaty laugh. "Well, sure, that's fun for like the first 100 times." Madeline's eyes went wide, and she looked away, fussing with her skirt. It was a heavy fabric, totally black, and tucked and shaped at the waist so it fell in a perfect bell around her legs, just below the knee. "Your clothes are really pretty," Jax said. "It must be lovely to wear them." "Yeah, for like the first 100 times." Jax was surprised at the bitterness in the girl's voice. "You don't like them? Why wear them?" She slumped down on the riverbank and patted the ground beside her. Madeline sat down primly, tucking her skirt around her knees. She watched the water for a while. "There's a particular aesthetic in my mother's house. Once I was turned, it's expected that I keep up the standard set by my nana, and the mothers before her. Beauty is power, and vampires really like power." "Wow." Jax stared intently at Madeline. She doesn't like it. Beauty is power? Among werewolves, power was power. Strength, leadership, charisma even. But beauty was for pleasure, and pleasure you did, well, for pleasure, because you wanted to. Madeline looked away from Jax's golden eyes. She was pleased for the second time tonight that she couldn't blush, but she felt like covering her face anyway. Instead, she sat up straighter, glared back at Jax, and asked, "If you're so into pretty clothes and the like, why don't you just wear them? Why come down here to play dress-up?" Now Jax turned her gaze to the river. She watched for so long, Madeline thought she might not answer. She turned to watching the moonlight run in shivering checks of silver across the surface of the water. "My people don't really do that," Jax finally said. "Clothes are for working in or just relaxing. A lot just gets wrecked when we go hunting. There's no dressing up. Plus, there isn't really any money for things like that. And I don't know, it's seen as kind of superficial, I guess. Or like you think you're better than the rest of the pack." "Well," Madeline watched Jax, hunched over, meek, picking at the grass between her feet, and a wave of nausea washed over her, so strong it left her shaken. How does she keep finding new ways to hate this werewolf? "Well, what about other people then? Friends? You're just a regular person most of the time, aren't you? Surely there's some girl at school who would love to braid your hair or whatever." "Nah, I'm always a wolf. The regular face is just a disguise and the normies can feel it, so we don't hang out with them. Even when the moon's not full. We homeschool." Homeschool? God, this is all just too wholesome for me. Jax's eyes narrowed. "What, vampires don't learn things?" "Oh, all the time. Study is pretty much all I do. What's the point in living for an eternity if you don't master all the arts and sciences?" "But shouldn't you wolves just be..." "What, running naked in the streets?" Jax smirked. Madeline sneered back at Jax. Then her eyes darted wildly before she hid her face in her hands. Jax thought she might be about to cry when she started shuddering violently, and then chortled out loud. Madeline peeked out from behind her hands, groaned, and said, "I do seem to think about it rather a lot." "Yeah?" Jax replied. "Might just mean you want to try it out sometime." "Yeah, maybe it does." Madeline smiled at her with such warmth it was like looking at a different girl. Jax smiled back. The moon shone. The breeze blew with the suggestion of the coming autumn. It set the trees sighing. Then the girl shot out her hand and grabbed Jax's arm. "I'll do your hair and makeup." What had Madeline been thinking? Nothing, obviously. The pretty wolf is smiling at me, obviously. But now she was just about trembling at the thought of it. She smoothed her skirt, checked her cuffs. It'll be fine. She knows makeup. She knows hair. She does it all the time. Madeline's stomach clenched and she felt a little dizzy on her rooftop. Should she hunt before this meeting or not? Too late, they were due to meet any minute. She'd hidden out. When Jax had replied, "Well, I'm covered in fur. Not really much use for hair and makeup." That was Madeline's cue to say, "Oh, of course, never mind." But no, stupidly, she had stupidly suggested that they meet on another night when the moon wasn't full and she was in her normie disguise so they could play dress-ups together. Now she had to see the wolf as a girl, a weak, normal girl. She had to see her looking like prey. Madeline blew out a long breath and made her way down to the river. Why? Because if she did a really good job, Jax would smile at her again. She would maybe see something in her. There it is, God. Madeline trembled a little, but she didn't blush. Here she comes. Jax walked along the riverbank towards her, loose and long-limbed still, her dark hair a short shag around her handsome face. Her skin was a warm brown, and Madeline could almost see the sun it had absorbed shining back out. Her golden eyes still glowed in the dark. Still the wolf. And a girl. Jax approached slowly, giving Madeline time to take in her human face. Her hands were a bit twitchy, and her eyes kept darting back to the big bag Madeline had with her. She felt as clueless as a cub. She was suddenly so grateful to have this young vampire to guide her. She smiled wide and said, "Hi, Madeline. Thanks again for this. I'm in your hands." Madeline cleared her throat, shuffled a little aimlessly, fussing with her skirt and hair. Then she opened her bag. Madeline worked quickly and efficiently, but still the whole thing was a lot more involved and took a lot longer than Jax expected. There were so many little tubes and pellets and bottles, so many colours and textures and scents. It was a little overwhelming and weirdly intimate. Jax was fidgety and shy. Still, as she watched Madeline work, a tentative but sweet anticipation spread warmth through her whole being. "I think I'm done," Madeline finally announced. "Do you want to see now, or try on some clothes first?" "Clothes? Yeah, I thought you might like a few things to go with the coat. Make a whole look. See what you think." Madeline opened out a small case to reveal maybe a dozen beautiful pieces of clothing. "There's some jewellery in this little bag too." Jax staggered to her feet. "This is too much." "No, I think it'll be just right." A kind of nausea washed over Jax. What was it like to have so much money, so many fine things? You would just give them away like this. Jax felt a rage in her belly and one of her uncle's political diatribes rising in her throat. But then there was Madeline, smiling so sweetly, expectantly, saying it would be just right. And Jax did want to try other things with that red coat. She wanted to see what enough looked like. Okay. Jax surprised Madeline by choosing a simple, crisp white shirt, a gold chain and a few rings, opting to wear them with her own black jeans and combat boots. For once Jax pulled the red coat on, it made sense. "Perfect." Madeline held up the mirror. "Wow." Jax stared silently at herself for a moment. "Wow, you're really good at this." That smile at Madeline again before returning to the mirror. Yes, she was good at this. She'd been learning and perfecting these skills for so long, and yet no matter what she tried on her own face, it seemed to take something away from her. But here was Jax transformed by her proficiency. Her hair was smoothed into close waves over her head, her skin dewy, her lips rosy, her nails black. Madeline had expertly shaped Jax's eyebrows and lined her lids, all of it working to highlight those big eyes. All the better to see her with. "You look more dangerous now than ever," Madeline said softly. "I know," Jax said, grabbing her hand. "I do." "What do you want to do now? You look ready to conquer the world." An image flashed into Madeline's mind of Jax wolfing up and throwing her over her shoulder. Yikes. Jax winced. Conquer the world? Is that what this was about? Did Jax want power over other people? She didn't think so. Just playing pretty dolls then? No. She stared harder at the mirror. No, she wasn't weak or silly, but she wasn't dominating either. She looked like her. She could recognize herself deeply for the first time. And yet there was also a sense of, who's that person? What can they do? I think I just want to go for a walk, kind of make my way home slowly, feel my oats. I can't stay up too long on a non-wolf night anyway. Jace could see Madeline's disappointment and she squeezed her hand again. Thank you, really, Madeline. You're such a good friend. See you sometime soon, yeah? Madeline nodded. And Jack strode off into the night. She fairly floated off into the night. There was a humming in her veins. Her feet beat out a satisfying rhythm on the street. The coat, her coat, flared out around her. The rings flashed as her arms swung. She started to strut. Then she broke into a run. Madeline was back on her rooftop. Just her and the moon and the owls. But she wasn't watching the night. She was feeling it, letting it in. She had hunted. She'd taken off her makeup and all her beautiful clothes. She sat in her camisole and shorts, breathing in the crisp autumn air and noticing it move the little hairs on her upper arms, on her ankles. Feeling the moonlight seep into her skin and run in shivering silver through the network of her veins. The owls called out to her as a friend in the night, and she sang back to them. There she was all this time, here, waiting, wild. And she was going to try it. Tonight she would run naked in the streets. Right now. Well, any minute. That's it. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day. Noho oromai.